Today is probably going to take a different approach, and we're trying to link Bitcoin with nature. And when I say nature, I mean our own true nature, human nature. And why is it natural? Natural. So what is natural and what is unnatural? This is something that we're gonna discuss over the next half an hour. So bit by bit, the natural investor is something that I came up with when I was over in India. I come from a financial background. Actuary, it's the calculation of probability and looking into the future and trying to make sure insurance companies and banks are adequately reserved for future claims. So it's a lot of mathematics, a lot of statistics for a good few years. And when I was working for PricewaterhouseCoopers and auditing multi-billion-dollar balance sheets, I got to see what the financial system was made up of. And luckily enough, I was studying about Bitcoin at the same time. So I started to see the divergence of the reality of the assumptions and what these super large insurance companies were assuming about inflation, what they were assuming about risk, how much they looked back on. They usually just look back on the last couple of years. And I said, I want to be as away from this as possible so that I'm not in the middle of it when it starts to implode. So the natural investor, I was in India and I was meditating and doing a yoga teacher training for a solid 3 months. And when I was doing that, I was trying to dwell over the concept of money and of wealth because it was something that was pressing on my mind and my conscience for a long time. I was trying to figure out whether the building of wealth was moral or was it not. And it might be obvious to people as whether it is or it's not, but you're confronted with a lot of different opinions over the course of your life as to money being evil, conflated with bad things. So I was reading a couple of old texts, the Vedas, which are 4,000 years old, and they're the basis of the Hindu religion. And they talk about the building of wealth and how that is one of the fundamental pillars of a peaceful life when balanced with your other aspects of life. So that gave me good courage to try and figure out a way to link money and the understanding of oneself or the soul, spirituality. And I think this is a topic that requires a lot of thought and pondering and testing in the material world. And I think it's quite interesting. The good thing about Bitcoin is that it's not manipulatable by the mind. The mind bringing the concept of unnaturalness. But we'll delve into this over the next while. So, bit by bit, this is what I'm going to talk about. Bitcoin is natural. What is natural? What is Bitcoin? So I'm going to try and talk about this through the lens of Austrian Economics. I think Austrian Economics is a theory that's been built on over the last couple of centuries, and there's something really refreshing about reading Austrian Economics because it talks about the individual, and that's the only outlook that everyone has. You cannot see for someone else. You cannot feel for someone else. You can only feel for yourself and act based on the external factors. So that's something that is the base axiom, let's say, the base assumption for Austrian economics. Murray Rothbard talks about money and it says it's the common measure of value. Value being subjective based on every single person's perspective. So money has to be sort of outside of human consciousness in a way. It has to be constrained by something natural that isn't manipulated by the mind. So money is the common measure of value. The Austrian economics, they say that based on your own self-interests and your own external factors, you make decisions in your own self-interest. And when that is collectively done, you start to see emergent, intelligent properties from nature. As you can see in an ant colony. Basically, each ant just worried about its own environment and following a set of rules to be able to get food back to its nest. And you see this amazing complex structure that none of the ants are aware of, but that emerges collectively from all of them working, following a set of rules and in their own self-interest. There was this test done, and I found this just amazing. It was in Japan. So they allocated food on a petri dish, and they allowed this fungi, this bacteria, in different parts of the petri dish, and let them form roots to consume the food on the petri dish. And the pieces of food represent nodes, and they represent the different subway stations in Japan, in Tokyo. And they found that the bacteria formed roots that were far more efficient than the Japanese underground subway system. And this was an emergent property from nature that they got to see. And the Tokyo underground subway takes about 8 million people a day. So it's not inefficient in human relatively in human nature. So these are emergent properties that we can see in nature. So we can see nature is intelligent. Nature is intelligent. Existing in or caused by nature, not made or caused by humankind. So the idea of nature, natural and unnatural, only comes into being when you bring a human in, because they are the only thing that can make something unnatural. Just dwell over that. So money, obviously, this is why we're here. Bitcoin representing money, representing the first ever human-made money that is absolutely scarce. Rothbard said that we've been using gold for around 6,000 years as our base coordination tool. Like the way we coordinate our actions as human beings, we use this tool, money, to be able to achieve what we want. So once we stop using something we've used for 6,000 years, there's going to be consequences. And I feel like we all can see these consequences emerge over the last century, the last 50 years, and then obviously every time there's a shock to the system, it just amplifies as the people governing the money that we use at the moment, the dollar, let's say, they can change the rules based on new shocks that happen. So if a government controls money, and the government is also responsive to the citizens of the jurisdiction, and they're akin to being emotional and reacting, which is the mind, they influence the money because the central bank have the ability to change the rules of the money, which we see. Once you start changing the rules, you start going from natural money to unnatural money, and that's when distortions start to appear. That's when things start to not be in line with what each individual wants for themselves. People start to allocate money to other people, and then other people lose out. So you're not letting nature allocate the resources efficiently, just like the bacteria was able to efficiently go to each one of those nodes. Sound money. What is sound money? If you can add value to society and people want to reward you for the value that you've added, they give you something in the form of money. It's a beautiful tool that allowed us to solve the coincidence of wants. it's amazing because it's allowed us to divide our labor, to become more specialized, to be more efficient, and to create amazing structures like aqueducts, castles, museums, for us to be able to have time to dwell on art and music and all these things that really bring about the richness of what life is, let's say. When you earn that money, you want your money to be able to purchase the equivalent amount of resources, not only now, but over the course of time. So obviously, the storing of value over time is an integral part of money, of that tool. You want to be able to trade with your future self. You want to be able to save it. And scarcity is obviously the paramount characteristic in order to store value over time. Gold being a phenomenal instrument in that form, only inflating by about 2% on a yearly basis. So yeah, so also money also to transact and to be able to be served as a unit of account. Why is that so important? Well, you've been dealt cards in life. You're born into this world and you have a certain amount of resources around you. But you need to understand what those resources are, how valuable they are to you, and how valuable they are to the rest of the world, so that you can make logical decisions with your resources to be able to help you navigate what we call life. So this is unnatural money. Does that look like a flower to you, or does it look like a natural flocking of birds? This is what I call the distortion of the mind, let's say, of emotional money. That's what I call that. That's the Fed funds rate, which basically prices money across the globe. And that influences all of our lives consistently. And how does unnatural money affect us? Well, I think we all know this. What happens to the dollar? Every time a shock happens, the guys who decide about the dollar inflate the dollar. It devalues it at a fast rate and an exponentially faster rate, given our debt. And what does that do with our incentives? So we don't want to save dollars because every time we take it, it's devaluing quickly. So we try and figure out ways to maintain our wealth. And we start allocating those dollars into fast returning investments, and it has to be continuously faster returning investments as the time goes by, which creates a complete misallocation of capital. So we lose the ability to understand what other humans need around us, which is the basis of entrepreneurship. For us to be able to be an entrepreneur, you need to understand what people need, what they want, the relationship between supply and demand. And when the tool that actually gauges that stops working, what the fuck do we do?
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think buying Bitcoin is a good shout. But also using Bitcoin, guys. I think this is another big thing. I think storing Bitcoin is fantastic. That's the way you do. But every time we use the dollar, we're giving power over to whoever is issuing that dollar. So trying to find those local communities that are using Bitcoin is key. This is going to be the start of this new parallel system by which we're all going to live on, and we're all going to be able to find the true value of things, including ourselves, understanding ourselves. So this is the effect of distorted and unnatural money. It's just a misallocation. Do you think we need this? Does anybody need this here? So why is it happening? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Why is it happening? Not one person in this room thinks this is necessary. So why is Bitcoin natural? Bitcoin 2009, it's every time I wake up in the morning, I think about Bitcoin and I'm just blown away. I'm just like, what? Is this actually happening? You know, am I sharing this whole dream with this massive community of people who've seen the same thing that I've seen? I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing, and I think it is a gift from God. I do, I genuinely do. So this is the issuance schedule for Bitcoin. This is measured by mathematics. I don't know, people think about maths, but I enjoy it because it allows me to make sense out of things, and it's what I've studied, and it's not akin to moving based on human emotions. It's fixed. It's fixed. We're able to predict what's going to happen in the future with our money. It's not going to change. To be able to find peace within ourselves, we need to find stillness. We need to be able to find a place where we're free from distractions. If you think about that collectively, if we're constantly distracted with the price of money and it's changing because it influences all of our lives, how can we find internal peace? There's no way, because this touches all of our lives, every aspect of our life continuously. When we have a fixed schedule, we can focus on other aspects of our life, whether that's our own family, our health, philosophy, arts, those things that we still dwell on thousands of years after they've been improved on. Who do we listen to? Aristotle, Plato, Galileo. These are guys that had time on their hands. Bitcoin gives us time to figure out who we are as an individual and obviously as a collective. Hash rate, energy, physical energy. This is the constraint that brings Bitcoin into the material world. This is what links, I suppose, the abstract world of our minds, of us valuing things, to the material world of energy. Everything is made out of energy. Mass is made out of energy. E equals mc squared. So once we have a measure for that, then we get to start to link our collective valuation of the world with the real energy that exists. And this is going to be interesting as time advances and as more energy is allocated towards Bitcoin. Obviously, this is a whole different branch, mining, and where Bitcoin is going to come out of and how we're going to structure society around that, but I think that's for another day. So Bitcoin connects us. Gigi is an absolute legend. I've learned a lot from him. He's helped my understanding of time, but it's interconnected. Bitcoin allows us to be able to transact our stored value over space instantly. And that is absolutely scarce. So once we have Bitcoin, so we're trying to think of its natural nature. So we have this fixed issuance, we have this fixed limit, and we have this scarce asset that we can store in our heads and no one can take it from us. The returns on violence drop to close to zero, which means no one's incentivized to try and, rob your house and take your property because you have it stored in your head. So what does that push us to do? That incentivizes us to be able to figure out how can I serve the person who has the Bitcoin? We start shifting our mentality from one that is, how do I gain more dollars? How do I become more politically connected and get closer to credit, which is how it's issued, to how can I understand human nature, each individual around here, and serve them? How can I store my value for my kids, their kids, and their kids? How can I leave a legacy for the future? Bitcoin gives us time to reflect. It gives us stillness. It frees us from distractions. Bitcoin is natural, and what it allows us to do is to understand our own true nature, who we are as individuals, how we react to the external stimuli. Bitcoin is going to be able to bring each individual more aligned with themselves and understand what their true values are. And when you bring that all together, when you have all of these different individuals who are incentivized to be who they are, to serve others, to be able to think a bit more deeply about what's happening in the world, what is life? I think good things stem from this. I think very, very, very good things stem from this, and it's happening here in El Salvador. Come on. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. So by God, we need a tool to allow us to serve the people around us, the family around us. I've moved here now to El Salvador. I've been here for 4 months, and I've moved up to a town called Berlin, Usulután. And there's huge growth in this town. There's a really, really solid team there who are dedicated to the mission. Nikki and James and Gerardo up here, Evelyn, Patty, everyone here. People need to check this place out and see how it works. We're going to get this town onto a Bitcoin standard. It's happening as we speak. There's vendors reaching out to us to try and figure out how to accept and how to use Bitcoin. This is the way. So everyone here, I just challenge you to try and do that in their own little circle and to come up to Berlin and learn from trial and error. So yeah, you can donate towards Bitcoin Berlin on this link. Gerardo and Evelyn will be talking tomorrow. Check that out. It's a privilege to be there. It's a privilege to be here in front of everyone and get to see such a turnout. That's it from me. It's within the 30 minutes, but it's something to dwell on anyways. It's our own true nature and how Bitcoin is going to allow us to reach our ultimate selves. So yeah, thanks everyone. If anyone has any questions, if it's Berlin or if it's human consciousness, just... How
do we follow you on Twitter or Nostr?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the natural investors. So it's the natural Inve1. Maybe I can add text here on the fly. But the natural investor, and my main aim with this is to be able to link money and the soul, because I think it's something that requires a lot of work. Yeah? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm just going to put it here so people know. That's it there. That's my Twitter handle, guys. Okay, and yeah, I have a good conference. I hope everyone enjoys it. Everyone gets to learn. Everyone gets to connect with others who they haven't connected with before. And yeah, let's have some really good days. Is that a question? Can you put the chart up again? The chart? Which one? The chart we had with the issuance. The issuance schedule. Yeah, of course. Oh, of course. Yeah. So basically, on the left axis, on the y-axis here, we've got bitcoins. So you've got a maximum of 21 million bitcoins, and then this is the amount of blocks. So this is over the course of time. Here you have the monetary inflation. So at the start of the issuance of Bitcoin, you had over 1,000% inflation on an annual basis. And then every 4 years, obviously, you got the halving, so that inflation rate kind of, it halves, essentially. And you can see that from block 0 up to the end of all of the issuance. So that's the orange line. So you use the orange line against this axis here, which is the inflation rate. And as you can see, gold inflates at 2% annually. So that's 1%. So if we go down over here, we come down here, we get to block 840,000, 6.25, that's familiar. April will be moving on to 3.125. So we're at about close to 1%. Inflation may be a bit higher. This is a log scale, so it goes up in order of magnitude. But in a couple of years, we'll dip below gold and we'll reach what I think is a singularity. And then here on the left-hand side, we've got the number of Bitcoins. Obviously, the amount of Bitcoin in the system that was out at the start was 0, and that then continuously started to increase to then reach what's called an asymptote. It never actually reaches 21 million. It goes to 20.9999996 or something like that. And yeah, I think as humanity progresses and we start to shift over to a Bitcoin standard, we'll start to morally align as human beings. So I'm really looking forward to figuring out what they are. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Guys.